Okay. Good evening, everybody. Hello. Hi. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to West End Synagogue. My name is Joshua Kolok. I'm the rabbi here at West End, and it is our big honor and a privilege to be hosting all of you in partnership with many organizations in this Mayoral Forum. I want to, before I introduce Judy Sachs, who would say a few words, I want to say something that is very important for the Jewish tradition, and I think it's very important for these and other settings. In the Jewish tradition, the way we study is always with a partner. You know, the minimum amount of people that you use to study is 2. Why? Because you are trying to find somebody who will challenge you by the way of pointing to your weaknesses so that you get better and stronger in the way you present your points. So that way of studying is Hebruta. We study with our partners, with our friends. And for that to work, the most important rule is for that conversation to be civil, to be on point, and to be always related to the subjects and not against the person who is pointing at our weaknesses. Today, we have the very interesting challenge of having 9 friends. 11, but I'm a rabbi, I'm not a mathematician, so yes, Hebruta, yes. So we have 11 friends that will have the challenge of talking about very important subjects, where what we hope is that the conversation will be civil, will be about the issues, and that will allow all of us to learn where you stand, because it will help us to make decisions regarding where we want Nashville to be as we move forward. So what we hope is that that conversation will be awesome, fruitful, meaningful, insightful, and that will serve today and every day in the campaign. And for the one who gets to be elected and our new mayor, may you have the strength and the courage and the vision to take us forward in a city that doesn't leave anybody behind. With that, I'm not running for mayor, but now I will introduce you to Judy Sachs.
Thank you, Rabbi. And I also want to offer a big thank you to West End Synagogue for hosting this event or housing this event tonight. That was I'm Judy Sachs. I'm one of the founders of the Nashville Jewish Social Justice Roundtable, which is a mouthful, or as we call it, NJSJR. On behalf of our grassroots organization, I want to welcome our mayoral candidates and members of the audience for coming out tonight. NJSJR is a progressive Jewish voice within the broader Nashville Jewish community. We're committed to exploring and supporting solutions that will advance the principles of democratic pluralism, religious freedom, and social and economic justice. Our Jewish faith guides our commitment to maintain just, fair, and compassionate public policies on the national, state, and local levels. And it's our intent to support an interfaith, interethnic, and interracial community in which all can live with civility and dignity. We're grateful for this event's co-hosts, AMAC, the American Muslim Advisory Council, Jewish Federation's Jewish Community Relations Committee, Congregation Micah, Congregation Shereth Israel, the Temple, West End Synagogue, and the West Nashville Clergy Coalition. Additional thanks for promoting tonight's forum go to the Nashville Jews for Social Justice, the East Side Tribe, Moishe House, and A Voice. Faced with a large number of candidates, NJSJR decided to focus on just 2 issues that Nashvillians have been discussing for several years: affordable housing and transportation. We'll be asking the candidates for specific plans they have to alleviate the problems Nashville faces with these 2 issues. The first half of the program will be concerned with affordable housing, followed by transportation. Audience questions will follow after the candidates have covered both topics. You should have been given a card when you entered. Please write your question on the card, hold it up, and one of our ushers will take it from you. We're pleased that so many of you have come to learn more from our 11 candidates. Please take that knowledge, make your choice, and vote. Support for a candidate means nothing if it is not translated to a vote. And now I'll turn the mic over to Emily Seiner, former news director of WPLN Radio, who will serve as moderator for this evening. Thank you, Emily.
Can you hear me? Yes, great. So we've got a lot of folks on stage tonight. So here are the rules and we are sticking to them. First, I will ask you each to introduce yourselves. You will have 1 minute and I will cut you off politely. But in order to help you, we've got these paddles here. That means 30 seconds left. And that means stop talking, okay? Then we'll move on to our first question about affordable housing. You'll have 1.5 minutes to answer. I will ask you a follow-up question based on what you said, and you'll have 1 minute for the follow-up. And then we'll do the same thing for transit, and then we'll go to our audience questions. Audience, please raise up your card if you have an usher will come by and grab them at some point. And please hold your applause until the very end so that we can get through as much content as possible. So let's get started with introductions. Ms. Wilhoit, I'll start with you. You have 1 minute.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here today. Thank you to you can probably see me when I stand up. Thank you for having me here today. I am Vivian Wilhoit. I'm the assessor of property of Nashville, Davidson County. I have been serving a two-term as council member from 2003 to 2011. I came here to Nashville to attend Tennessee State University. My uncle urged me to come here and he's been amazing. And since after I graduated, a gentleman saw me and he was one of Nashville's sons. We got married. We have 2 sons. We have 2 dogs and I'm a grandmother. And don't call me grandmother, call me Vivi. But let me just say this, as mayor, I will be investing in affordable housing, we'll be investing in public safety, we'll be investing in education. We're gonna have to. That's the only way that we can continue to be excellent in those areas and be able to provide the services that the people need of Davidson County. But the platform that I'm running under is for stronger neighborhoods and stronger businesses. For years, those two topics have always been competing interests. In neighborhood, you think that you can't have good businesses. And businesses were always saying, focus on us, don't focus on neighborhoods. As a 2-term council member, I have seen where neighborhoods have not been as flourished as they used to be from when I was a council person. You had neighborhood cleanups, you had neighborhood watch programs, all of these things, and these resources are no longer, but we can bring them back. We need the stronger neighborhoods, and I ask you for your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Wiltshire, and please hold applause till the end of the entire forum. Thank you. Mr. Wiltshire, you're 1 minute.
Good evening. My name is Matt Wilshire. I am a Nashville native and proud graduate of Metro Nashville Public Schools. I graduated from Hume Fogg, went to Aiken. My 2 oldest children went to West End, just down the street. And I am running for mayor because things aren't working right in our city for people who live here, and it doesn't have to be that way. Now, back in 2010, I was the chair of the board of Hands on Nashville during the May 2010 floods, and I saw how important it was to have public-private partnerships to take on the big challenges that we face as a city. I then worked with Mayor Carl Dean as the Director of Economic and Community Development, and during that time, we were able to lower the unemployment rate here from over 8% to 2.0% by adding 42,000 jobs for Nashvillians. I then moved to the Public Housing Authority in 2019, and in just 3 years, we were able to build over 4,000 units of affordable housing through, again, public-private partnerships. But I see that there are big challenges that we're facing as a city, and so I've entered the race last July. And since I entered the race, a lot has changed. 874 of our closest friends have joined the race for mayor. But the things that I am focused on have not changed. Public education, public safety, and improving the quality of life for Nashvillians. I believe that I have the executive experience to lead this city, and I'm asking for your vote. My name is Matt Wilshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilshire. Senator Campbell.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. It's wonderful to be in this room with you this evening. I am the former mayor of Oak Hill and current state senator representing the west side of Nashville. This area is part of my district. My thought about what's going on in Nashville is, are we building a city to visit or a city to live in? I think a lot of people are feeling that way right now. People feel like Nashville is down at heel, like we've put a lot of love into downtown, but not a lot of love into the the areas of the city where people are living. 2 decades, over the past 2 decades, the city has changed significantly. And so I believe that we need somebody who understands the relationship that we have with the state currently, and has the relationships to lead us forward, because I would say we're in the middle of what I would call a hostile takeover from the state right now, or at least an attempted one. And that's more tribal than you may realize. And it's important to have somebody that not only has the relationships, but has the ability to catalyze communication. I think the office of the mayor should be as a venture catalyst to put opportunity with need. We have so many wonderful nonprofits and so many wonderful organizations in our city, and a lot of people in need. And the mayor's office is the perfect place to join those two things.
Thank you, Senator Campbell.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Freddie O'Connell. I'm ready to be your mayor. Grew up here, just around the corner, in fact. And for 20 years, I've been working to try to make this a better city as a neighborhood leader, nonprofit leader, transit leader, and most recently, council member. And the fundamental reason I'm running for mayor, I want you to remember 2 things about me. I'm prepared and I share your priorities. Just yesterday, we rolled out a series of 15 fixes. I hope you'll check it out at readyforfreddie.com. This is an action plan, and we have been doing all kinds of planning, and this is a program of things that we can focus on that are really community needs. I'm focused on the work of what the community needs. First and foremost, we need transportation options, not just more traffic. We need housing, better schools, more sidewalks, and safety. These are the records we should be setting, not stadiums. I am ready on day one. I'm here to focus on community needs. Look forward to earning your vote. My name is Freddie O'Connell. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Hello. Okay. Hi, y'all. I'm Stephanie Johnson, and I'm from Nashville. I actually got my start here in Nashville. When I was in high school, I was involved in the Oasis Center. I did the Innovation Board. I was the first group that was the Library Youth Council. I was a part of the Mayor's Youth Summit Committee. And then I also did, I was a peer leader in my high school. And so that catapulted me into my undergrad when I started doing anti-human trafficking work. I built a law chapter. I wasn't a law student, but I was so passionate about anti-human trafficking, they let me lead it. And so I started collaborating in the community, bringing people in to speak. And I got so good at it that I ended up sitting down with the FBI so they could learn how to collaborate in their community as well. And so I started to see a disparity with grassroots nonprofits versus the larger nonprofits. So I would go in there for free and develop their systems and build them up. And so I did that from Virginia all the way to California and Arizona. And I came back to Nashville to retire, to chill. But then I realized, wait a minute, something's not right. And I actually found NOAA, and I started learning about their stuff and going to different groups. And so for the past 8 years, I've been very involved in looking at the need. And so if there's a need, I respond. And so this is me responding to the need of Nashville.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Councilmember Hurt.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Hurt, and I am an action-driven, results-oriented, proven leader. I have served this community for 45 years as a public servant leader. I have served as a 25-year nonprofit leader, and I have also served 8 years as a council member at large. I want to restore hope and prosperity on every block in every community of this city. There is a tale of two cities in this city right now, and I want to make sure that we close that divide because it is obviously going to continue to be a wealth gap between all of those who are not benefiting from the growth and prosperity that this city has seen over the past 20 years. I want to serve in this role so I can provide economic empowerment for all Nashvillians, have accountability and enforcement for our metro government because we've got some departments that needs some help. I also want to stand up and stand out for people's civil rights. And I want to make sure that we have educational excellence because it is the fundamental purpose for us to have a successful life. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And I am the change that this city needs at this time. I am
Thank you,
Sharon
Councilmember.
Hurt, and I ask for your support and your vote.
Senator Yarbrough.
Good evening. Whoa, there you go. Wow. Even. I'm Jeff Yarbrough, and I'm asking for your vote to be the next mayor of Nashville. Over the last 2 decades, I've been a volunteer in our school system, a member of our board of Metropolitan Transit Authority, and for the last 9 years, a state senator representing this city in what's been tough times up there. I know the state, I know the city, and I know how to bring people together and build coalitions to get things done in both environments, because that's what I've been doing. Over the last 9 years, I've passed over 80 pieces of legislation that on every issue from affordable housing to transit to public education. And that's the kind of experience that we're going to need because I'm asking for your vote because I believe that you deserve a mayor that's going to make Nashville work and work for all of us. I really liked how the rabbi put it, is that we have to move forward without leaving anyone behind. For me, I think that means 3 key priorities. I think that means keeping people safe. And I think we should actually all acknowledge the fact that we had one of our officers in Nashville who was shot today while on duty, while on the line. And like, I hope that everyone keep that officer and his family and the whole force in their prayers. But in addition to keeping people safe, I think we have to educate our children. And frankly, we have to get a handle on growth. Because I think we know that the growth and development is growing like this and the
Thank you,
infrastructure and
Senator.
services are growing like that. And we got to make those match up.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gingrich.
Hey, everybody, my name's Jim Gingrich. If you have a city that grows without a plan to manage that growth, you end up with a lot of the challenges we have here in Nashville, 2 of which we're going to talk about today, but you also have rising crime, underfunded schools, and a host of other things like neighborhoods that flood that never used to, inadequate infrastructure. And we have talked about these issues for at least a decade. These are not new. We have studied them. We know what needs to be done, but we have consistently kicked the can. That has to change. We can grow, but it needs to be with a plan and a purpose, the center of which is enhancing the quality of life and the well-being of those who call Nashville home. But we need to act. We cannot have politics as usual. I'm the former chief operating officer of Alliance Bernstein. In that role, I oversaw thousands of employees and a multi-billion-dollar budget. And I got to that position because I had a long career where I showed time and time again, I could take on tough problems and get things done. I was retired. I intended to stay retired, but frustration has grown because of how I care about this city. We can do better, and we need to start to put the people who live here first in the mayor's office.
Thank you, Mr. Gingrich. Ms. Rowley.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. My name is Alice Rowley, and I'm running to serve as our city's 10th mayor to reset the compact between our citizens and City Hall. I'm running because mothers tell me they're concerned that only a quarter of our kids are reading on grade level. And I'm running because business owners are worried about rising crime and that we have 200 empty officer positions. And I'm running because all over the county, people tell me they do not care what your political party is if you cannot fill a pothole. And so after 20 years of electing the same people, we cannot keep doing that and expect a different result. So I'd like to offer, I am a Nashville native. the wife of a combat veteran who also was a member of the Jewish chapel at West Point, and a former business owner, a state economic development official, and the mom of 2 boys, one at Akiva and one at the Overbrook Catholic School. I think that we have a really beautiful future to build together. And I'd love to have the opportunity to learn more about you and what you're concerned with and what direction we're ready to take our city.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks.
Good evening. My name is Natisha Brooks. I'm known as Natisha R. Miss Brooks. I'm asking for your vote, support, and your cash. And speaking of cash, my mother told me today that if I don't start talking about senior citizens and the disabled and what we're gonna do for her, because she's a senior citizen, she's gonna take back her cash donation from my campaign. So what I'm gonna do for senior citizens and those that are of the disabled, we need to start making sure that we have housing for the disabled, and those that graduate with disabilities from high school, that they're able to transition. And I can talk about this because I'm a 33-year retired educator. I taught in public, private, and I have a homeschool academy, retired. Police officers, teachers, special ed teachers, $70,000 a year. They deserve to be able to live in the city that they serve and protect. Small businesses, we need to have a small business tax structure plan so that small businesses, which are the backbone of this country, are able to survive. And finally, all roads leads to mental health. Mental health clinics on corners of synagogues, churches, and community centers. My name is Natisha. They call me Natisha R. Miss Brooks. I ask for your love because I love this city. I also ask that you think about adoption and a foster care. I'm an adoption and foster care advocate. And as your mayor, this is one of the things that we're going to work with, is to make sure that children are in loving homes that they deserve to have. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Ms. Bush.
Yes, good evening, Nashville. My name is Fran Bush, and I'm running to be your next mayor of Nashville, Tennessee. I am a native Nashvilleian. I went to all Metro schools, Metro public schools. Went on to the Tennessee State University, where I majored in healthcare administration and planning, where I received my bachelor and graduate degree. There is where I met my amazing husband. We've been together for 31 years. In our union, we have 5 sons. Their names are Desmond, Dylan, David, Daniel, and Dalton. And yes, when they got in trouble when they were boys, I don't know who I called. It may have not been the right one, but they knew who I was talking to. I'm also a community leader in the Antioch community. I've been there since 2001. I have served as a HOA president for 21 years. I am an entrepreneur. I have 3 childcare academies in Antioch, Tennessee. And I was your previous board member that served for 4 years on Metro Nashville Public School Board. I am running to be your next mayor because you have to have someone who's intentional. I do not just talk the talk, I walk the walk. You look at my history, you look at my leadership. While I was on the school board, I did a lot of great things. It was some hard things, but you had to have courage. I got our students back in the classroom. You see the struggles that they have right now. I was your only board member to do that. And that takes a lot of leadership. It takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of being persistent in doing the work. That's the reason why the work that I've done over in the education realm, I want to take it into our city.
Thank you, Ms.
I know
Bush.
how to get the work done. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. All right, now let's get into the issues of starting with affordable housing.
There is a car or 2 cars parked in the fire lane on the far side of the building, that side of the building. If there were emergency vehicles coming, they couldn't get through. One's a Mazda. White Subaru and a Navy Mazda. If those could be moved, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so on affordable housing, you will each have 1.5 minutes to answer a question about affordable housing. We're going to rotate who starts. So Mr. Wilshire, you'll be starting this next one. Then I'll ask a follow-up question immediately after your response before moving on to the next candidate, and you'll have 1 minute to answer the follow-up. So 1.5 minutes for the first question, 1 minute for the follow-up. So here's the first question. You know that affordable housing is a key issue for Nashville residents. You've read the studies, heard plenty of concerns, and are ready to take action. What specific needs on affordable housing do you pledge to address And what can we expect to see during your administration that indicates progress? Let me read that again. What specific needs on affordable housing do you pledge to address? And what can we expect to see during your administration that indicates progress? You have a minute and a half.
Thank you. This is something that I've actually worked on over the last 3 years. So for those of you who don't know my full bio, I shared a little bit of it earlier, worked in the mayor's office for 8 years. And then in 2019, I left and joined MDHA to work on affordable housing. And there is still a lot of work to do, but we made tremendous progress in just 3 years, building over 500 units of mixed income housing at James Casey Homes and 3,500 units of affordable housing across the city through public-private partnerships. There are 3 specific commitments that I make to increase the affordability in Nashville. The first is, and I'm going to call Ms. Brooks's mother for a donation after I talk about this. The first is Nashville's becoming far less affordable, particularly for senior citizens who are on a fixed income. And there was a recent increase that the council did, and let me applaud the 2 members of council who are up here, to move up the income qualifying level to have a property tax freeze. But it's still far too difficult to navigate the complexities of how to take advantage of programs like this. We're going to have housing navigators to help folks take advantage of these programs, increase communication for it, and not just this program, but others, housing navigators. The second, the program that I was working on was called Envision KC. And that is an effort to transform areas of concentrated poverty into mixed in. Was that once? Okay.
Oh, I totally missed that too. That's a minute and a half.
A
Okay,
minute and a half.
thank you. I was
Great.
not paying attention.
I've got a 1-minute follow-up to get my next 2 points.
Yes. Well, I want to ask, you talked a lot about public-private partnerships.
Yep.
What exactly does that mean? Can you give an example of what that looks like?
So on programs, there may be a funding gap where there's a public interest that the private sector would not do on its own in Casey, building housing, transforming areas of concentrated poverty into thriving mixed income neighborhoods. We can utilize public assets like the land of Casey to incentivize the private sector to build housing and price it at a level that's affordable to people. That takes creativity. I got Amazon to invest $7 million in a redevelopment of public housing. We need to leverage private investment to improve the public interests. And we can do that, but it also involves making it easier to build housing along transit corridors. And we'll talk about transit later, but the price of housing, there'll be a lot of great things said here today, is simply where supply meets demand. And there has been far too much demand and not enough supply of housing. We need to lower the cost of building housing on transit corridors to make transit work better for people and leverage the private sector to build housing so the price comes down.
Great, thank you. Senator Campbell.
So I was talking to a guy today who was telling me that he wants to build affordable housing, but he finds it really difficult to do in Nashville because the permitting process is so complicated. And as somebody who served on the Planning Commission in Oak Hill and as the mayor, I can tell you that the process for getting permitting and zoning and all of those things are very onerous, not just in the satellite cities, but in Nashville as well. And I think that we can do a lot to streamline the process so that people can actually build affordable housing. Yes, we need to continue to invest in the Barnes Trust, which has brought $933 million to housing for a lot of our unhoused. There are 20,000 people in this city right now who are unhoused. And so we have to do something about that because that's indicative of an unhealthy city in a lot of ways. And everything is interconnected, you know? So, I mean, people are unhoused because they're experiencing financial crises, mental health crises. We need to make sure that we have a Maslowian approach to supporting people in our city so that affordability in general is something that we're addressing. And then in terms of dealing with the fact that the state prevents us from actually entering into affordable housing agreements with new developers, we need to look at financial tools to get around that, like lease agreements.
Thank you. I'd like to hear more about your details on your vision to reduce homelessness and helping unhoused people. What is one specific example of what that would look like?
So there are intermediary steps to actually helping our unhoused population. One thing that's really hard is that our shelters have so many barriers to entry. We don't let people come into shelters if they have animals or if they're married or if they work night shifts. So we need to make sure that we're assisting people at that level. And then we also, I'm on the board of the Rochelle Center where we provide housing for older disabled people. And we need to make sure that we are working with the nonprofits in our area to empower them to help our unhoused people and to provide services for them so that we can transition. And then the other thing is healthcare is such a big problem that, you know, Nashville General is going to be, the lease is going to be ending in 2027. And we have to do something about that. And one thing that we could look at is possibly building a new Nashville General so that we can actually address some of the mental health issues that are causing this.
Thank you, Senator. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you. Affordable housing is least affordable to those who lack housing altogether. The next mayor will hopefully cut the ribbon on the first publicly funded permanent supportive housing. Progress will be when we know that the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that have been allocated to this mean that public-private partnerships have produced more units than that project has, coupled with additional investments in that. We know that the Affordable Housing Task Force report that we've got says $30 million are needed to just keep up with basic supply. Progress will be when the mayor, not the Metro Council, has led on $30 million for all 4 years of this term in recommended budgets to the Metro Council to ensure that the Barnes Housing Trust Fund is properly funded. The dollars that go into that fund are leveraged by 7x to make sure that we build and maintain affordable housing, including now some types of permanent supportive housing. The trustee managed program that Matt mentioned, property tax relief for seniors at $60,000 income threshold now. We right now wait for people to come in the door. Progress is when Metro can tell you exactly how many people are eligible, that we've maximized the enrollment, and as many Nashvillians as possible are taking advantage of that program. Transit is affordable housing. Progress will be when we can measurably bring down people's transportation costs as part of their household, when we have community transit centers in every part of the community that uses transit and wants to, and not everybody has to come downtown because we have enough crosstown routes. All of these things are part of an incredible toolkit that we will be using for 4 years to make absolute progress on affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. What you're describing with permanent supportive housing it sounds like a very expensive project. So how would you create new revenue sources or reallocate current budget to pay for that?
It is expensive. You're right, Emily. And this is one of the hardest parts about developing it, because it is for permanent supportive housing is the housing for people at greatest risk of losing housing because of chronic homelessness. It means addiction, it means mental health issues, it means disabilities that may mean that you can't ever exist the way that other people do in the economy. And so it means housing and services. It's never not going to be expensive, and we have to adjust to that. But the way that we have structured the use of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and this is something I give Mayor Cooper credit for, takes advantage of private partnerships to ensure that people building larger structures of market rate housing or other types of affordable housing will be incentivized with public money to create permanent supportive housing in those scenarios. But we are going to have to invest additional public money in the program because that is one-time money.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Yes, so I believe that one of our biggest issues is that we're having a really bad time conserving affordable housing. And so we have all these situations where Nashville is affordable, but then you have developers come in, they'll buy the place and they'll kick everybody out. And so we have to think about how we're going to conserve affordability. And so we have to scale. We have to look at every district and see who has affordable housing and who doesn't have affordable housing. And look at the districts who are carrying the burden of keeping affordable housing and those who are allowing it to disappear and say, hey, we've set this scale. This is this acceptable scale. And if a council person is rezoning out affordable housing, we have to sit at the table and have a talk about why are you allowing these people to be displaced. When Bernie Sanders saw all these people about to be displaced when he was mayor in Burlington, he came out of his office and went down there and stopped it. And so we have to start there. And then we also, Metro has tons of property, And so we can land bank these properties and create private-public partnerships. We can do social impact bonds as well. And so when somebody invests in the housing, we don't put the money up, they put the money up, and until it comes back, then we pay them. So we're taking the risk off ourselves. I sat down with a businessman, and he was a builder, and I said, you know, we really,
Thank you. Some resistance to preserving or growing affordable housing stock may come from residents within the neighborhood. How would you overcome resistance from neighbors?
yes, so a lot of people, I feel like some of those people can be scapegoated because we are developing at an astronomical rate. You know, and a lot of people, it doesn't matter if it's affordable or it's super expensive, they just don't want tons of development in their neighborhoods. And so when we set this scale, right, and they see that you don't have any affordable housing in your district, and it's your responsibility to find space for people who need it in the low income area, you put it back to the community. And so community problems need communal solutions. And so you also have organizations that are being creative in affordable housing. We're building intentional communities, 3D printing. And so why are we giving millions of dollars to the same developers that are helping displace people so then they can turn around and build the affordable housing? I want to give that to the communities, and we can create creative, and then we can help, communities can help design that creativity. And so maybe instead of forcing stuff on people, ask them to help.
Thank you. Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you so very much. I believe that affordable housing has to be a priority. It has not been put as a priority. You have to be intentional about making it happen. Very much like we did when we had the neighborhood stabilization program that provided hundreds of homes for families that are still able to live in those homes. I think we have to create more of those homes as well as preserve homes for our legacy residents. Many of them are on income-based, on fixed incomes now, and they can't afford it because Nashville is not affordable. So I think we need to also create some attainable housing. And for those individuals who are in homes and unable to continue to pay for it, I think we need to have some partnerships. Provide some homes for some teachers, for some graduate students who could become companions and partners for those seniors who may need to have some companionship. I would take those strip malls that we have and put businesses on the bottom and have the residents on top. We've got schools that are empty. I would change those schools and provide homes for our teachers, for them to be able to live there. We've got too many people that are voting with their feet and leaving our county because they no longer can afford to live here. I understand that our values in our homes have gone up, and that is a good thing, but if it is valued out of the reach where people cannot pay the housing taxes.
Thank you, Councilmember. To help people on fixed incomes, what would you do in your first 100 days? What kind of specific first step would you take?
The first step I would take is go to the Department of Planning and change some of the zoning plans and get the permits that they have a backlog of right now for those developers who are trying to build. I think that we can get those developers to allow some of the housing that they develop for the owners of the property that they may seek to build housing on, and let them become part owners and be developers apart with them, so they will not be pushed out and gentrified out of their homes, but able to stay there and also receive residual income as they are making it with the developers.
Thank you. Senator Yarborough.
When I was first elected in 2014, affordable housing was one of the first public policy priorities I had. Moved 3 different policies to expand the tools that Metro has to build and preserve affordable housing. This isn't a new problem, but it is going to take a new solution. Like, we are doing things, but we are nibbling around the edges, and we are not getting close to dealing with the deficit in affordable housing that we actually have. We are going to have the 30,000, 40,000 units short of the units that we need based on the current trajectory. We're going to have to do a lot more. Here's a few of the specific things you do. One, you can't just think about it as building affordable housing. You got to preserve affordable housing where you got. That is about better utilizing property tax raises. It's working with nonprofits to make sure that people can retrofit their homes and stay in them. Two, I think it does mean that you got to bring the nonprofit sector and the private sector into the game by cleaning up and speeding up some of the zoning and permitting processes. Number three, we got to do a better job of converting renters to owners by better financial empowerment, savings programs, and even for a lot of our cops, teachers, firefighters that make this city work, down payment assistance plans. And then finally, for that special types of housing where we have really hard needs and tough market conditions, the government needs to really leverage our property dollars to really get things.
Thank you, Senator. Tell me more about like what exactly does preserving affordable housing look like?
So preserving, I mean, this is really critical to think about because we think about creating like 500 units, but how many units are we losing at any given moment? So partially that is making sure that our property taxes for our seniors on fixed incomes are frozen so that those people can stay in the homes in the communities that they help build. I think second, that means that you work with people where you see affordable housing that's a little run down, rather than having it just torn down and replaced, like having a little bit of work rehabbing it so it stays in that price zone is very helpful. Three, there's actually some federal subsidized affordable housing that just ages out. Like that is affordable housing right now, but it will become market housing unless the government acts to preserve that affordable housing status as it's in the creation point. And there's numerous things like that we should be doing to preserve affordable housing where it is today.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Gingrich.
We do have an affordable housing crisis, but I think the frustrating part for many of us is that this is not a surprise. We've been talking about it again for at least a decade. We have done multiple studies. They have recommendations, but they sit in 3-ring binders gathering dust on the shelf, and we are not doing enough. And the unfortunate thing is that this has real consequences. The people that work for our city, that serve our city, policemen, firefighters, other metro workers, teachers cannot afford to live in the city they serve. Our level of the unhoused is too high. This is unacceptable. We need to start to take action. Now, you have to understand the nature of the problem at hand. We absolutely should properly and consistently fund the Barnes Fund, but we need tens of thousands of units of affordable housing. That is an issue that is on the order of $10 billion. Similarly, we need thousands of permanent housing for those who are unhoused. Building those at nearly $300,000 a unit, city funded, is not going to be the solution. The only way we are going to make progress is if we bring the private sector much more aggressively into helping us find the solution. And as Heidi said, when you talk to people who do that, they tell you the city is among the most difficult to do business with.
As you mentioned, the mayor's office and many others have produced lots of reports on affordable housing. The last one was in 2021, and some of the action items in there have been implemented. So what's one thing that you would do from that plan that has not been implemented?
As I said, I think that we have to be much more supportive of those who build affordable housing. One of the reasons it is so difficult, which we've touched on, is that when it takes months and months to get a building permit, when you go to codes and then you turn around and go to water and sewer and they tell you something else, or when you need an electrical inspection and it's delayed by 12 weeks, that kills the economics of anybody trying to do this. That's why when I talk to folks, they say, I'd rather do this in another city than do it in Nashville. And it doesn't have to be that way. There was just a trip that was organized to Tampa. They issue building permits in a week. This is about how do you harness an organization of Metro that is 8,500 employees and get it to work better than it does today. That's what I used to do before I decided to retire. And I'm going to do it if I'm elected mayor.
Thank you.
Because that's what we need to do here in Nashville.
Thank you. Sorry, I cut you off 2 seconds early. Didn't mean to do that.
I can finish.
Ms. Raleigh.
Yep. Thank you, Emily, for the question. So the first issue is not raising taxes. We made some of our most affordable housing less affordable when we raised taxes. If you owned a building that you rent out with multiple units and we raised your property taxes $12,000, you passed that on to the 12 renters that you have. So that is one piece, is to recognize our role there. The second is the space that's been discussed already, is around permitting. When we are getting in the way of bringing new housing supply onto the market. We know that over the last 20 years, our zoning code has been tinkered with at the margins, and it has become frankly, second to our city's debt, probably the biggest challenge for people looking to invest or build here. The third area that I would look at is our economic development tools that we have used successfully at the state and to a certain extent at the city level to bring about and to incentivize the private sector to act. And then in terms of your question about how would you measure yourself, it would be the number of days to build, the number of days to permitting, the units and the rate, as Freddie discussed, and then also our percentage of owner occupied, which is worrisome that we are about 20% higher than the national average of our owner occupied versus rental occupied. And when we think about an economic downturn and about building Nashville as a city, a great American city where we can achieve the American dream, not enough people are owning their homes.
Thank you. When you talk about reducing property taxes for homeowners, how would you make up for the loss in revenue by doing that?
Well, what I said specifically is to not raise the taxes. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to share on that? Sorry.
Nope.
Okay. Nope. Great. Thank you. Ms. Brooks.
Thank you. Thank you. So I see this is a competition on donations between me and Matt. So my website is letitiafornashville.com, mother. So I would like to work with a program called TIF, Tax Increment Funding, once again for the disabled and for senior citizens, so that there's always funding. As my mother would say, I'm on a fixed income. She reminds me of that every day. I understand and I get it. I would like to work with more nonprofits like that to ensure that the disabled are housed and that the seniors are housed. But one thing we're not talking about here is what about those individuals of second chances? Yes, those that are coming out of incarceration. Yes, they need a home too. And that's where a lot of our homelessness is coming from. And we're not talking about the fentanyl and the opioid problem that we severely have here in Nashville that leads to homeless. So I'd like to work with home developers, not on affordable housing, but income-based housing, low-income housing, measured income housing, so that those that can't afford to live in Nashville, we give a tax break to home developers and builders that will focus on, yes, those that were incarcerated, yes, those that are coming out of addiction, and yes, our seniors and our disabled.
Thank you. How would you incentivize developers to work specifically with people that are coming out of prison?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How would you incentivize developers specifically to give housing to people who are formerly incarcerated?
Well, one of the things is a lot of incarcerated don't have work and they're looking for work. So maybe we can do a trade-off, work for housing, called the barter system.
Thank you. Ms. Bush?
Yes, so being an HOA president, I've been an HOA president for 21 years. I've had an opportunity to build great relationships with builders and developers. One of the things that in my community in Antioch is Southeast Davidson County is the fastest growing area in Davidson County. We have thousands and thousands of apartments that are being built. Right now, we all know that the inventory on houses are very, very, very low. So right now, what I would like to do as your next mayor, I want to be able to bring those developers, builders, landlords, and corporations that are owning these apartments to the table. And that's what you have to do. You have to build relationships. I said earlier that I just don't talk that talk, but I walk that walk. And building those relationships is what you need in order to make progress. While I've been a HOA president, I've seen how it works. And for example, Lots of times when developers come in, they want to kind of take the easy way out on just building their houses and not providing green space and sidewalks. Well, I've been able to not only one, but two newly constructed communities where I have been able to build those relationships. And that was out of the equation. But because of the relationships that I built, both communities got sidewalks and green space. It's all about building relationships. And yes, they were ready for their bonds. They were ready to get paid, but they didn't get paid because they know that the community input was very important. It is important also to not only bring those people to the table, but we want to make, right now it's an urgency. We always talk about the tumbleweed effect in Nashville when it comes to affordable housing. And that's what you're getting tired of. Nashville wants something right now because it's urgent. Thank you so much.
Oh, 1 second. Yeah, what would be your first step as mayor in building the city's relationships with developers?
Yeah, so it works. You have to start communicating. You have to start communicating early. One of the things that I have noticed, especially when it comes to me, is that I'm very, very intentional about getting work done. I do not slow walk anything. Once I know that we have an issue or we need work done, that's what I do. I go after that work. I'm very hungry when it comes to getting work done. I don't like keep seeing the same thing happen over and over again. So you have to build those relationships. If you build those relationships, the outcomes are much greater and the work is done, progress is made, and we get the work done for this slow walking issue that we're having with affordable housing. We have to be more intentional, and you need a mayor like myself that can get that done. I did it on the school board and I can do it for our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Wilhite.
Well, so when I went into office, the first thing I noticed, and I knew that it was coming, the 2017 reappraisal. And I got with NOAA and gave NOAA their marching orders, and that is to communicate. Communicate with people in homes about the fact that they need to get on the tax freeze, tax relief, and tax deferral program. All three of those programs are available right now. I worked with Reverend Representative Love in reference to increasing the amount of income that you can receive in order to qualify for those programs. So it's gone from 42,000 to 60,000. It needs to be increased even more. That was just for the tax freeze. We need to do something with the tax relief and need to talk more about tax deferral, where you do not have to pay taxes until you pass away or till you win the lottery. In other words, till your situation changes. That's the first thing you would do, is communicate. You never go to the grocery store and not know what you need to bring back home. Men, you know that, right? Okay. So we need to find out, what is our housing stock? What is it that we need? So I would definitely want to know, what do we need before we actually talk about what we're going to build. When it comes to affordable housing, we have to use public and private partnerships. Why? Because we've never built housing alone. Government's never done it. Remember turnkey? Remember statements like projects? That came with public and private partnerships. Then I will continue to make sure that we be accountable in reference to the 5,000 unit that Mayor Cooper said he's building already.
Thank you.
And we need to make sure that that gets done. Thank you.
You talked about your track record on, you talked
My
about.
microphone is off. I'm sorry. So my cheerleader voice did come through, right? Very good, very good.
You talked about your track record on communication around property taxes. What would you do differently or to further that as mayor?
I wouldn't do anything differently, but do more of it. I would take it on as accountability. It is my job in reference to making sure that you are aware of the programs that are available to you. We should not be hiding under a rock about information. People want to know, where is the information and how can they qualify? Like tax deferral. Now, these are programs that are not under my purview in order to administer. But I advocate for these programs because I knew that in the reappraisal, and the reappraisal happened in 2021, where the economy was going in reference to values of homes. What was the arm's length exchange between the buyer and seller, and what people were being crazy in reference to paying for certain property in Davidson County. We got to protect our people who are here now. And to ensure to do that, we must give them the information that they need so they can be empowered to make the commitment, the decisions that they need to make. And then there's also programs with social services that you may not know about, but you know why you don't know about it? Because there's no communication on it. We have to communicate about the information. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to our next topic. And I think in order to get through more audience questions, I'm going to say a minute for your first response and then a minute for your second response as well. Sound good? Also, you can go shorter than that. Brevity is powerful too. So I ask you a question about public transit, and then I'll also ask you a personalized follow-up question. Imagine for a moment it's the fall of 2027, and you've now been Nashville's mayor for 3 years. Congratulations. By 2027, what is your biggest breakthrough or clear measurable outcome on the issue of transportation here in Nashville? So by 2027, what is your biggest breakthrough or clear measurable outcome regarding the issue of transportation here in Nashville? Senator Campbell.
So obviously, we're way behind for a city our size in addressing our transit issue. Nashville is rated the most automobile dependent city in the country right now for a city our size. It's a bad situation, and we push transit down the road for a long time now. And so I would like to look at bold visions like moving Radnor Yards to Wilson County. Radnor Yards is right by Hundred Oaks, huge train switching yard that CSX uses. If we move it to Wilson County, that becomes an 840 route, a route around the city for freight. And we can actually look at freeing up the internal train lines so that we can use them maybe for trains, but maybe for buses, maybe for multimodal connectivity. You know that right of way in Nashville is very hard to come by. And so we're going to have to get creative. The other thing we need to do is build up our multimodal connectivity. We just passed the largest transportation bill in the history of our state, and we actually have the funding to do that.
Thank you, Senator. On the first idea that you talked about, what would you do in your first 100 days as mayor to work on that?
Well, I think that we have to actually start to lay the groundwork to do that. I was on the Greater Nashville Regional Council, the South Corridor Task Force, when we were actually looking at the transit deal that didn't pass for a lot of complicated political reasons. It's time for us to look at big, bold transit opportunities because we can't keep kicking the can down the road on this. So I would like to see us actually put together a plan that people can vote on and we can actually acquire the funding. That does not have to be funding that comes directly from Nashvillians. We can actually build the funding for that from a lot of different resources, you know, possibly from, you know, some of the federal funding that we're looking at right now. I got a study done for Amtrak and passenger rail done, and we're looking at doing a route from Nashville to Chattanooga because Chattanooga to Atlanta is going to be built. That would connect us to the Eastern network. So we've got to look at bigger visions like that while we're actually doing the nuts and bolts of the multimodal connectivity.
Thank you, Senator. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thanks, Emily. By 2027, it'll be very exciting because Nashville will finally have joined the ranks of other major American cities, and we will have successfully, as a community, come together, and we will have secured dedicated funding for our transit program. It will be a community-driven program that solves problems like having high-capacity transit serving the major transit trip generators in the region like Vanderbilt, but we won't stop there because we will have been shovel-ready for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, solving problems that aren't just transit-related, like the at-grade rail crossings, such as the one on 4th Avenue South heading out of downtown. That's a major bottleneck, but is also a transit route. And we will be able to connect people to simple things like being able to allow people to ride a bus to our very popular Nashville SC soccer stadium. These are the kinds of things that you can do when you have focus and operational strategy coming right out of the mayor's office on day one.
Thank you. How would you secure dedicated funding for transit? Like what specifically does that look like?
Right. So at the moment, we only have one way to do it. It is under a state-based program called the Improve Act. And it is 5 years now after the referendum that we remember from 2018. And there were many lessons there. Very few cities get this right on the first try, and we will go right back into the community with a coalition that just stood on the steps of City Hall a few weeks ago, commemorating the failure of that referendum. And we will use a coalition, the likes of which we had many of the ingredients last time, like all 4 of our HBCUs, our major colleges and universities, except this time we will engage alumni networks, we will engage neighborhoods, we will make sure that we are designing our routes in accordance with the strategic plan we already have, and we will do it as we are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Nashville Next, making sure the places where transit works most effectively leverage it successfully.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
So in that year, everyone will have a bus hub in their district. And there'll be circular transportation moving through every community, connecting pathways that have been disconnected right now where we aren't able to connect in. And we'll also have begun to connect the larger districts together, moving people into the city. We also will have started a conversation about regional transportation, moving people from different counties. We'll also have allowed the Star to run later than 5 p.m. We'll have concerts and events with their own transit plans that help to pay for the Star and buses. We'll have satellite locations for the symphony and the TPAC so people can park and come in. Let's see. That's a lot.
Well, so a question is, which of those ideas would be your top priority and why?
Yes, my top priority is finishing funding. So in North Nashville, they built, I believe, a bus hub, and they paid for it partially through the GRNC. So there's like $3.1 billion coming from that. And so I want to see every district starting to see hubs in their districts. And so people don't necessarily have to leave out, but we can start to talk about more partnerships to get single moms are having a hard time getting places. So more partnerships that bring them out of areas where they can't get to buses. We had a company in Atlanta started Her Ride. And so it was a company that just picks up women because of abuse and things like this. And so there's a lot of opportunities for private companies to come on, Senior Ride, to help us do the, so presently right now we have issues. So the bigger thing is future. So we have to think about what's happening now in the present and start to fill those gaps. So filling those gaps is the first thing.
Thank you. Councilmember Hurt.
Well, I think in 2027, everybody in Nashville will be happy because when I become mayor, I'm going to make sure that we'll be able to get back and forth from every county downtown in 20 minutes. And we're going to be able to do that because, you know, they say it's about 20 minutes and from every different county, we're going to make sure we do that because we're going to release the congestion of that traffic. First, you got to find the root of the problem before you can get to the fruit of it. And I already have a national organization identifying where the congestion is so we can move that out. We're going to have flex time. Make sure that our students are getting to school. Our high school students will have one bus that will come into different areas, pick them up as opposed to having hundreds of cars going down to the downtown areas for them to get to their schools. We're going to also have a designated lane with HOV. Make sure that those cars coming from our different.
Thank you. I would like to hear more, what is a specific example of how, and you were starting to talk about this, but of how you would reduce congestion from people coming in from out of other counties?
So as for the people coming from the other counties, we would have a designated lane in HOV. Make sure that they are utilizing that lane properly and also giving them a fee in order to do it. They just given millions of dollars for a designated lane from our federal government, and they'll be able to use it. It's a card. They have it in Florida, in Illinois, Georgia, called an iPass or Good Pass, some of that. I know Florida's iPass, and they have cameras, and you are coming from those communities, and you can go 70 miles an hour, make sure that they're doing it very, very reasonable cost, and that's generating money for us to be able to use for our schools and other things that we need in order to generate and make sure that we have good streets and not have potholes all over our interstates.
Thank you. I also just want to briefly say, if you have a question on your card, we've got an usher coming around, or ushers, so raise them up. Senator Yarbrough.
Thank you. I believe it's mission critical that Nashville stop developing a new vision for transportation every time it elects a new mayor. You know, transportation and transit infrastructure is something that is built over decades, and we can't, jump around on that every 4 years. And so I think a critical piece of business for the next mayor is forging that working consensus that can actually guide our federal, state, local spending decisions going forward. Now, it's my hope that by the end of 2027, we've actually broken ground on what I think of as kind of transit 2.0 or real transit. which means that you've got something that is a true dedicated lane, rapid, reliable thing that people can actually build their lives around and not just get lost in transit. Because, you know, your city's transit ought to shine when there's a Taylor Swift concert. A Taylor Swift concert shouldn't break the city. But I think that's going to require getting to the next level of infrastructure. And that's what we got to do in the first term, if anybody.
Thank you. There have been a lot of studies on transit, and each one claims to be building off of the last one. So what would you do differently as mayor to integrate the information?
It's not about to me, this is not about the doing the studies. It is about forging the consensus and plan both locally and regionally that can outlast a mayor. We got to buy into like what we should have done the day after the last transit plan was defeated is the planning for whatever the next transit plan should have started the next day. We should have learned the lessons, studied them, and started replanning. Like, where is it that we go next? What makes sense for the city, and how do we actually build the consensus to work towards that goal? And that is to me the work that is critical. It's not about like there are lots of good transit ideas out there. What we don't have is the political will and leadership to actually get it done, and that's what the next mayor has to provide.
Thank you, Mr. Gingrich.
So I would just slightly amend what Jeff said. It's about time that we had a mayor who actually did something about this rather than do a study. Again, this is not a new problem. Go back and watch the 2015 debates. It was a center issue in those debates, but we need to do something. I would focus on 3 things. One is we have way too many pedestrian deaths in this city. 49 last year. That was up 25%. You go back a few years, it was less than half of that. There are very pragmatic things that we can do, but if, for example, it takes the backlog of traffic calming that we have is ridiculous. Second, we need to demonstrate to the people of Nashville that if we do common sense things, whether or not it's keeping the roads in good condition or actually putting better volume, higher frequency on high volume routes that we can get people on the buses. And thirdly, you have to address regional transit. 90% of our population growth in the last 5 years has been in the counties that surround Davidson.
Thank you. I'd like to hear more details about your vision to reduce pedestrian death. Like, what specifically does that look like?
Well, so I will say there are a few things. One is, let's just start to redesign the most dangerous intersections. Let's create crossings that somebody doesn't have to walk a quarter or half a mile down the road to hit a traffic light. Let's get our lights to actually work. The other day, I was trying to cross Charlotte Avenue. We waited for 7 minutes. There was a group of 8 of us until we finally decided, let's take our life into our hands and jaywalk. It is basic stuff. And traffic calming is super important as well. But I also want to say this issue of regional is really important. It also talks about why it is naive for any leader to talk about. I'm going to focus on 1 or 2 issues. Because go back to affordable housing. Why is somebody living in Cheatham County today? Oftentimes it's because they cannot afford to live in Davidson County. Or they might be in Wilson County because for whatever reason, they don't want their kid in an MMPS school. These things are all tied together. You need a holistic approach.
Thank you. Ms. Rowley.
Yep, so I agree with the statement that we don't need to continue to change course. We have 21 county and municipal mayors who have agreed together in a plan called Moving Forward that was created after the failed Go It Alone transit referendum of 2018. That together with the state and these mayors, they've said the single most important thing for the next 4 years for Nashville's next mayor is to get dedicated transit funding. We are leaving both state and federal dollars on the table by not doing that. And I would say it is starting with a regional approach. As nice as our former mayor was, who led the transit referendum, according to the Williamson County mayor, she never went to talk to him. I've already been to talk to him and to the Rutherford County mayor and to a lot of our regional mayors because we actually can't solve this alone. We're a single media market. If we actually want to pass a dedicated transit funding, we've got to work with our neighbors and
Thank you, Ms. Rowley.
align our votes.
Thank you. What is the next step toward getting dedicated regional transit funding?
Yeah, so my understanding from meeting with the chamber is that unfortunately, there has to be another study. And I've actually asked them to create a Gantt chart and back into, tell me which election, which voter, is it the state? Like which specific election? Is it November 2026? And then back into what we would need to do in order to qualify and be on that ballot. One of the issues is that people I think insultingly talk about Nashville residents in the transit referendum. And they say, we don't know where these voters came from. We know 40,000 people came to vote in a municipal election that were so frustrated by the downtown crowd telling them they knew what was best. And they realized they were totally left out of that. And so I would say we have to start to also listen to residents across the county, but it starts with picking the election and then backwards planning to say, how do I get on that ballot so that we can be successful?
Thank you. Ms. Brooks.
So as I sit at my favorite five-star restaurant and listen to people, by the way, my favorite five-star restaurant is the Waffle House. One thing that all of the seniors and the disabled will be happy with is I want the seniors and the disabled to have free parking. Free parking for seniors and the disabled. Let's go and talk about transit for a second. As I met with the NDOT director, and I'm going to meet with her again, we want a fast bus track system from Rutherford County into Nashville and the airport into Davidson County. How do we pay for it without raising taxes? Remember the 3 cents hospitality tax? You send a mayor like me that's going to work with legislatures, that has already a working relationship with legislatures, to get at least 1 cent of that 3 cents hospitality tax to start on our transit.
I'm curious how else, you talked about parking, which is usually in the tourism area. I'm curious how else you would help with transit outside of the downtown core.
I'm glad you asked that question. So at the same Waffle House, a gentleman said, Miss Brooks, have you been to Disney World? It's just an idea. We go up, start a monorail system, go up instead of on the ground. And as my father was a former engineer, he's no longer with us, I've talked to other engineers. So I'm gonna look into a monorail plan from Rutherford County and from Wilson County into Nashville.
Thank you. And Ms. Bush?
Yes. Again, I talk about urgency, right? We talk about transient and we're 20 to 25 years behind right now. So it's gonna take us to get to 2027 to have a plan. Remember, I told you, I don't just talk that talk, right? I keep hearing the same thing over and over again, which I call it what? The tumbleweed effect. So you have to have someone who can sit down and be able to not only look at a study, but you have to have someone that knows how to plan. I call myself the PEP factor, not the PPP. We're done with COVID, right? We're talking about someone who has a plan, who execute, and progress is made. And that's exactly what I've done for 80,000 children that we had to get them back into the classroom. And because of my urgency and because of my intent on the local level, I was able to make gains for our children in the future. The problem is with transient is that we continue to keep talking about the same thing over and over again, and we're still not there. Again, if I'm your next mayor, it's time to start moving the needle and
Thank you,
also
Ms.
having a conversation with people
Thank
like
you.
in the room.
What would you do in your first 100 days to move that needle?
Well, just like I just mentioned, the reason why 2018 failed, that particular transit plan, was because people like you in the room did not buy into it. It just didn't work. And why it didn't work? Because it wasn't touching the neighborhoods that it should touch. It wasn't touching our county like it should. And so people felt they were being left out or neglected. So under my plan, that's not gonna happen because I'm gonna have those type of conversations and meetings with people like you so we can get it right. Not about me. I just wanna go and be your leader. I wanna be someone who'll be your representation, someone that can make sure that the work is being done based on what Nashvillians need. So that will be my plan. And by 2027, we will have a plan in place to move transient forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we need a microphone down on this end. Okay. That's well.
Well, In 27, I'll be a hot 63-year-old. Okay? So, we think about transit. It's not one of my top issues, I'm just gonna be honest with you, because it really takes the other counties to be a part of making transit happen, mass transit. It's a regional issue. We're gonna have to sit down and talk with the other counties where a lot of the traffic is coming from, and sit them all at one table. Bring in the best and brightest. And let's talk about what type of transit we're gonna need, because by the time we get it done, the transit we're talking about today is not gonna be the transit we're gonna need. Okay, we're gonna be already outdated. Yes, we have been kicking the can down the road. And then another thing, transit needs to coincide with affordable housing. Affordable housing should be on the corridors of bus systems, so people can be able to get to work and get to the places where they need to go. That's where affordable housing need to be. So it should be a relationship there.
Thank you. What pushback would you anticipate from other counties in a regional conversation about transit, and how would you overcome it?
Well, of course, the pushback is going to be about money. Okay, they're rural county or a lesser county in revenues, of course that. But we have to let them see the end result of what their participation will mean, because it cannot happen unless they participate. And then I wanted to also say in reference to transit, the low-hanging fruit, there are lots of them. All of my colleagues have named some amazing low-hanging fruit that we can all use. But there's one of them that's right there that we're going to have to work with the state on. And that's in reference to the 840. 840 needs to be finished. If you go home, take a look at a map, or you look at it on your phone, 840 just rides just underneath around Nashville, okay? Those 18-wheelers don't have to come through Nashville right now, they do. But we finished the top part of 840, they can go all the way around to wherever they're going next, north, south, east, west. And we can work with the state in getting that done much quicker than we can also do the mass transit system that we've been talking about.
Thank you. Mr. Wilshire.
So in the fall of 2027, we will be under construction on Nashville's first dedicated mass transit route. It will happen when I am elected mayor. It will be dedicated mass transit from the airport to downtown via Murfreesboro Pike. Murfreesboro Pike is already the highest ridership bus line that we have. And so we're well positioned to receive 60% of this project funded by the federal government. And Assessor Wilhoit's correct. We will be under construction on building affordable housing at transit stops, so folks who work downtown or at the airport, which is a large employer, can get to work without paying $40 or $50 a day for parking. We will start this process the day that I am inaugurated as mayor, and we will be under construction by the fall of 2027. These things take a long time in the planning process. If we don't start today, it will be another 20 years. The best time to plant an oak tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant an oak tree is today. The best part,
Thank you.
I'll get to it in a second, I'm sure.
Tell me about funding for this ambitious project. How would you secure funding for this?
The best part about this project is what stopped the AMP in 2013, right outside this building, was that the state said there was insufficient right-of-way available on West End. But there is wide right-of-way available on Murfreesboro Pike. And so there's a great opportunity to do this. And the best part is, the other best part, is that it can be funded 60% by the federal government, 15% by the airport authority, which is allowed to pay for all of the infrastructure from the airport to the first transit stop. And I believe if we repair the relationship with the state, we can get the state to participate as well. But even if we cannot, this is something that we can do without having to have a dedicated referendum. The city portion of this can be funded with our existing funding sources that are available. And the incremental taxes generated by the redevelopment of Murfreesboro Pike will be a significant source to offset the cost of bonding the construction of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to some audience questions. So I think in order to get through more audience questions, I hate to do this, but I want to cut it down to 30 seconds. Is that okay? You can do lightning round. You're used to this. Okay. So
I'll just remind people my name.
so maybe we'll have the paddle go up at 15 and then the yellow paddle at 15, the red paddle at 0. Does that sound good? So we're going to start with a question actually from one of our co-sponsors, AMAC, the American Muslim Advisory Council. Metro allocated one-time federal funds for the eviction right to counsel program, which offers free legal representation for those facing eviction, but it will end in June 2024. We want to know if you would allocate more funds to keep the program going. And
Yeah.
so we will start, yes, Councilman.
Great, thank you. It's an important question because we have a lot of things we did using one-time funding that are not one-time issues. This is one of them. I was actually working independently on a program to structure this important process into the Metro budget, and that's what we'll keep working on when I'm mayor.
Ms. Johnson.
So this is what I call conserving affordable housing and low-income housing, and that would fit into that idea about having dedicated funding to ensure that people who might be displaced, we ensure that they're not displaced and then help them however they need to stay in their homes, whatever issue they had, that we bring in support to ensure that they don't get back to that point again.
Thank you. Councilmember.
And yes, I absolutely would and would work with the Social Services Department where our homeless commission now lies. And we have a new director in April Calvin, but also will utilize those funds that we would receive from some of our developers in the relationships that we would build, making sure that people are becoming homeowners on the properties that they are now going to redevelop and provide housing for those who need it the most.
Thank you. Senator Abrams.
To me, this is a priority when it comes to preserving affordable housing where it is. I've been long in this fight. I helped found the pro bono program at my law firm, and one of the first projects we undertook was working with Legal Aid to protect tenants who are being evicted. I think this is a place where there are natural partnerships to build in the community to ensure that you've got right to counsel. And I mean, I think government should be the seed money, and can make that a really effective part of our policy.
Thank you, Mr. Gingrich.
So I'm a big believer in common sense, and this is a great example of how you can spend a little bit of money and save the city and others a lot of money down the line. This to me is a very easy yes.
Thank you. Ms. Rowley.
Yeah, so I've committed to have a top to bottom review to take a look at what we are spending money on and what is actually producing a result for the most Nashvillians, because this is your money. So I'm unable at this time to without some kind of data on the program to make a commitment like that. We want to prioritize our public safety in our schools first, and then we will look at what else is available.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks.
I apologize. Can you repeat the question one more time? I could not hear it.
Yes. Metro allocated one-time federal funds for the eviction right to counsel program, which offers free legal representation for those facing eviction. It'll end in June 2024. Would you allocate more funds to keep the program going?
Absolutely. And I also would allocate more funds to the Legal Aid Society. We need to make sure that individuals have due process, especially when it comes to evictions. It's easier said than done until you actually go through the process. And most of us in here are probably one check away from eviction anyway. So that's me and you make sense on that. I would absolutely say yes on that.
Thank you. Ms. Bush?
Yes, this will definitely be a priority. This is a no-brainer. This is something that people need in order to combat the issues that we're having with homelessness and affordable housing. It just makes common sense to continue the program. And that would be one of the things that I would definitely make sure, if I'm your next mayor, that it will continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
And the answer is yes, no doubt. I mean, why would we not want to help those who are the least of us, who to be able to be fair, be treated fairly in reference to eviction. But I would also add with candidate Brooks also said, yeah, the Middle Tennessee Legal Aid Society is a very amazing organization, and we need to help fund them too as well in reference to continuing this type of program. And then another thing to also add is that sometimes it's not about the eviction rate itself, but it's also about discriminatory acts. And we need to make sure that we invest in the justice system to make sure that's not happening as well. Thank you.
Mr. Wilshire?
Ms. Brooks, thank you, and Assessor Will Hoyt. My father actually led the Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee for 30 years. So I'll say yes to the question and thank you for the shout out to my father.
Senator,
No, that was a shout out to Legal Aid Society.
So in in this incredibly regressive state where we're constantly bragging about how fiscally stable we are, let's not conflate fiscal stability with fiscal responsibility. I talk so much ad nauseum in the legislature about opportunity costs. And this is a perfect example of a great investment that will relieve opportunity costs in the future. So absolutely, I would support continuing this process. Moreover, we really need to lift up our nonprofits and organizations that are doing great work like this, because they know what they're doing.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Johnson, we'll start with you for the next audience, for this first audience question. Do you see any possibility of help from the state with our transportation problems? And if so, how would you go about securing that help?
Yes, so there's something called the Greater Nashville Regional Council. And it's a council where all the mayors across the region come and sit down at a table, a board meeting. They have it once a month. Not a lot of people from the public know about it, but you're allowed to be there. And they have this huge pool of money. Right now, they've given about 300 million of it out. And we have 2 projects that are funded, partially funded, one in Madison, a park, and then the transportation hub in North Nashville. And so that's where we can continuously be at the table.
Ms. Johnson. Thank you. Councilmember Hurt.
Yes, you know, the state has not borrowed money to do any road construction since 1977. So I would actually encourage them to borrow some money, because they have excellent credit, in order for them to build the highways, make sure that the bridges are correct, make sure that all of the potholes are filled, and make it easier for us to be able to travel back and forth, and make sure that they also get those designated and dedicated HOV lanes in order for us to build some revenue for our city.
Thank you, Senator.
The state can help and truly has to. You can't actually fix potholes in Nashville on state roads unless you actually figure out a relationship with the state and make it work. That's the reality. I mean, so there is a real pathway to partnership here. One of the first things I did in the legislature is sit down with Bill Haslam and work on the authority to get dedicated funding for transit in Nashville. Just this year, I'm the only person here that supported the new infrastructure package that will, and worked with this Commissioner of Transportation to get multimodal commitments out of the state for that.
Thank you.
This is one example where we need to reset and rebuild the relationship with the state. There are others. We also need to reset and rebuild the relationship we have with the surrounding counties. And there is an opportunity, and the national mayor is the logical convener to build stronger relationships with mayors across the state. We share many common issues. Cookeville has an affordable housing issue, so does Chattanooga, so does Dixon. And all of us in this region have a transportation issue.
That's really.
Yeah, I do want to thank Senator Yarborough as the only state Senate candidate on the stage who did vote for the transportation funding. I also want to point out, if you are frustrated right now in getting to the Nashville airport, there is $150 million from the state in this budget and $150 million of fees from people going through the Metro Nashville Airport, not from Davidson County taxpayers, going to fund expansion and improvement there. And so I do believe that we do win as a city when we work and we leverage those state dollars.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks.
This is why I say, let's make history, send a teacher to the office of mayor, because I have to go up there and politely and re-educate the state legislatures on the $760 million gas tax to fill these potholes and to beautify our city. And the reason why I have to educate them is because they don't live in the city. They live in Clay County, Warren County, Smith County. They don't get what we're going through. So I have to re-educate them of what they passed on in the first place.
Thank you. Ms. Bush.
Yes, and to her point, you have to educate them, but unfortunately with the state, they can be a lot difficult, right? They can be very difficult to work with. And again, it goes back to relationship. It goes back to building those relationships. And I've done that. You've heard me say that. I remember when we were trying to get Bell Road paved, and it was hard because it was a state road. But what I did was I went into that office, I called that office, and I was very persistent on getting the Bell Road repaved. And it was done because I built relationship. and
Thank
I
you.
Plan to do so.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ms. Wilhite?
Oh, I thought I got Bell Road paved. I was a council person at that time. No, because there was so many answers, could you please repeat that question for me, please? Thank you.
Yes, hold on. Is there any do you see any possibility of help from the state with their transportation problems? And if so, how would you go about securing that help?
Yes, I do see possibility, and possibility is also in relationship. All of our colleagues have stated that statement right now. It is in building relationship. We need to do a hard reset. We know how we got here. You know, we got here because of the fact the state wanted to take offense to the fact that we didn't want the RNC to be here. And that just poked the bear. So we just have to start again. We just have to start again and do a hard reset and sit down and talk about the things that are needed for you, not for me, not for the elected official, but for you. That's the reason why we're there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilshire?
I agree essentially. And further, I have a proven track record of actually working collaboratively with the state. As the director of the mayor's office of ECD, I worked with our partners at the state. When I was at MDHA, I worked with our partners at THDA to constructively build relationships to achieve common goals. We can absolutely do that in transit as well. We just have to work together. It's difficult to talk to people who you sometimes disagree with. And that's what needs to happen today.
Thank you.
Over half of the state's revenue comes from the city of Nashville, and yet this transportation plan that we just passed was a multi-billion-dollar paving plan. And it involved toll roads that are going to be done by private entities. And my argument was that if it is such a lucrative thing that these private out of the country organizations are going to come build toll roads and profit off of us, then why is a state which is actually got such a high bond, a high rating that they could pay themselves to borrow money from themselves, not building those roads themselves?
Councilmember.
This is a scenario of embracing constraints. And even before the state-local relationship got fractured, we would build transit plans when I was an MTA board member around assumptions that relied on zero to very little state funding. We should continue to do that. And the good news, at least for the short term, is we're going to have fantastic partners in the federal government with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. But we have great regional partners as well. We have partners ready to come in with us to fund transit that is regional. And of course, we have ourselves.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Councilmember Hurt. Describe how you will engage and listen to community members to transform housing and transportation.
You know, that is exactly what I've done for the 45 years I've worked in the community, is that you start with the people. You hear what it is, you have to listen. It has to be communication between each, and communication is understanding and being understood. That's exactly what I have done. I've been working in the community, in the trenches, making sure that not one forgotten block or one forgotten community has been left behind. I also wanted to say that I did have shuttle transportation that was funded by the state, the federal,
Thank you,
and the local
Councilmember.
governments.
Senator Yarbrough.
Look, I think that the way you actually get input and respond to the community it's what makes government different than what a lot of other organizations do. We have to actually do that because people don't like it when you just when someone smart from the government comes with a plan without ever having run it by anybody in the community. We know that we have trust to rebuild. We know that people actually, if we listen to people, we know that the ideas will get better. And I think we have to systematically.
Thank you,
get better
Senator.
input.
Mr. Gingrich.
It goes without saying that you have to build processes to systematically get that input as opposed to do it in a high ad hoc way. But I also think we have a lot of cynicism today when we have not demonstrated that we can do common sense, practical things. When I can't get across Charlotte, yeah, 12 people by the time I tried to get across. People get frustrated and they get a little cynical when we start talking about what goes on with it.
Thank you, Mr. Gingrich. Is the microphone working?
Yeah.
No.
How's that one?
Perfect.
Better?
Go
Okay.
for it.
Yeah, so governing in the age of outrage that we are in now is very difficult without trust. Probably the two institutions left that people do trust are their houses of worship here. And for the most part, the businesses that they work for. So I think in order to bring back an ability to listen or dialogue, we are going to have to lean heavily on our houses of worship and also our business community to help us convene as more, I guess, transparent actors.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks?
It's an easy solution. You put it to a vote, just like our property taxes that were doubled, that should have been put to a vote. Secondly, relationships. Someone mentioned the RNC convention. I don't care if it's the RNC, DNC, Jewish, Catholic. Money is not red, nor is it blue. It is green. Bring the conventions here so that we can keep our property taxes low and not have a reason to increase our property taxes so that we can have a better way of living for our seniors and our
Thank you, Ms.
disabled.
Brooks. Ms. Bush?
Yes, one of the things that maybe you all don't remember, about 8 years ago, transportation in our area could have gotten even worse than what's happening right now. We're growing by leaps and bounds in Antioch. One of the things that our leaders wanted to do is bring the jail to Antioch, right? That was pretty crazy. And what I did was I stepped in very quickly and we put a halt to that. I had a community meeting, over 300 people that participated. And we worked and we worked and we worked. And that piece of property that was a very high profit property, they wanted to shift everything back out to Antioch, and we stopped that. And it was part of my,
Thank you, Ms.
my diligence of getting that done. Thank you.
Ms. Wilhite?
How are we gonna make it happen? We're gonna listen. I mean, that's bottom line. We're gonna listen. We're gonna listen to you. We're gonna bring you together and we're gonna talk about with the best and the brightest of experts at the table too, so that we can be guided listening in reference to what's needed in our community. Plain and simple. We're gonna listen. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Wilshire?
May I ask this, and would you repeat the question?
Yes. Describe how you will engage and listen to community members to transform housing and transportation.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I want to re-answer that question again. I didn't get it right.
The Envision process at MDHA, which we worked on, was built with tremendous skepticism by the community because the Hope 6 programs had displaced residents. It was through intensive, repeated outreach to community members that there's now broad buy-in to the Envision plan. And the residents who are there are the only complaints they have are that it's not moving quickly enough. That only comes through intensive, focused engagement and outreach.
So the best education I ever had on this was being the mayor of Oak Hill, where I made the horrible mistake, I guess, of trying to put a multimodal path down Franklin Pike. And you would have thought that I was killing puppies. It was really, really bad, but I learned something, and that is that I did not do the hard work of getting community support and community buy-in. And that is something that you do to your detriment. You have to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on and that you get input from people. So it's really about doing the hard work of communicating.
Councilmember?
Outreach helps prevent outrage. As a former neighborhood leader, this is one of the best case scenarios. I invite anybody in here to come check out 3rd Avenue North and Coffee Street in Salem Town, right on the edge of my neighborhood, where we brought our local utility, Metro Water, out to come solve some infrastructure problems. They've got a multi-use path that's now basically a sidewalk, a brand new transit stop where I used to get off in ditches and puddles. And we're building housing with a minority developer who lives in the neighborhood on several vacant lots that were vacant for 20 years. So we're bringing it all together out of the neighborhood.
Ms. Johnson?
So community problems need community solutions, and all of my plans involve the community. So for housing, where do you want it? Renovate it, build it. For transportation, it's literally based off of the last referendum and why it failed, because there was a lot of people that did not feel included. So now we're going back to the districts and including them in their own transportation plans and then connecting to the larger body. And so then when we vote, everyone feels included and then we can get something moving.
Thank you. Candidates, it's been very valuable to hear your ideas tonight. We have to wrap up with our concluding statements. So Senator Yarbrough, I'll start with you. You have 30 seconds.
I'm Jeff Yarbrough. I would love to ask for your vote. Look, I think everybody up here has said some things that I agree with tonight. There are a lot of great ideas about how to make our city work. At the end of the day, I'm asking for your vote because you need a mayor that you can trust to actually bring the city together, work on these issues and achieve progress. And that's exactly what I've been doing. I have worked and passed bills and brought people together on affordable housing, on transit, on public safety, on public education, and done that work in the legislature where they aren't even for those things. So I imagine what we can do here where people are committed to a better future.
Thank you. Also, I do realize we had told you all 1 minute for concluding statements, so you have 30 more seconds. Go for it.
God, well,
And I,
well, can everybody do it like that? All right. Well, so look, here's the other thing that I think this city's got to get its head around. Like, I have seen too much like pessimism in around our city lately. Like, we are a city that knows how to solve problems. If you think back to the 80s, you could fire a cannon down Broadway at 3 o'clock in the afternoon without risk of hitting anything. And we invested in ourselves and started solving problems. And we need to believe in ourselves again. And the next mayor has to bring that out in us, because that's how we're actually going to move this city forward.
thank you. Okay, so from now on, 1 minute, the yellow paddle will mean 30 seconds. Sorry about that, Senator.
Thank you. My name's Jim Gingrich. I agree with Jeff. This is such a great city, and what makes it so great are the people who live in it, because people here care, and they care about their neighbors, and they care about the future of the city. You see it in how people give to nonprofits. You see it in how they spend time in nonprofits. You know, I sit on 5 nonprofit boards. It's because I care about this city. But we are at a critical juncture. We have had a conversation tonight about people who are being left behind. And it's because we have been growing and growing without a plan. And we need to tackle this in a holistic way. And we got to stop studying the problem, and we have to start getting things done. That is the career I built. That's why I got to where I was. And that is what I plan to do for the people who live here in Nashville. My name's Jim Gingrich. I hope to earn your support.
Thank you. Ms. Rowley?
Yeah, my name's Alice Rowley, and I would be delighted to earn your support to be Nashville's 10th mayor. Our family is from Nashville originally, and when my husband was in the Army and he finally finished his service, we got back here as soon as we could because we wanted our children to know their grandparents. I think that this campaign is in a lot of ways around the quality of life, about what legacy we want to leave for our kids and our grandkids. And I do believe that we can love Tennessee and love Nashville, and actually believe when we do that, more is accomplished. I would encourage you to check out our campaign at Alice Rowley and to send any questions that you have. Thank you.
Ms. Brooks?
Letitia for Nashville.com. I have a name. Most people see me on the streets and they say, "You're the lady with the hat." That's correct. I'm #1 on the ballot. So I'm very simple. So as an educator, let me give you a quick lesson. Please live with your kids and not through your children. Trade schools matter. If they don't become a doctor, if they don't become a lawyer, whatever you want them to be, I'm talking to seniors, because seniors, you're now educating your grandchildren. You're taking care of your grandchildren, helping with your grandchildren, and the disabled. Lastly, but not least, all roads, everything that we've talked about today leads through mental health. Check on your loved ones. We will have mental health clinics. That's one of the first things that we're going to do as mayor of Nashville. I ask you for your vote. I ask you for your support. I got you, you got me. Together, we are better.
Thank you. Ms. Bush?
Yes, I want to first and foremost thank you guys for having me to speak before you tonight. One of the things I want you to do, I want you to think about something tonight. My name is Fran Bush, and I have a history of being very intentional in getting work done. When you can see the work that I've done for our Metro Nashville Public School students, 80,000 students who are displaced, I got them back in the classroom because it was very, very important, because they were suffering. We were all suffering during COVID, but you have to have someone that who can move things in urgency. It's all about urgency for me. When I open up my childcare facilities, I have 3. Each one of them, they said it takes 9 to 12 months to open up a facility. And this is a state-run facility, right? Well, it took me 3.5 months. You know why? Because that's the person you have before you. You have someone who does, I don't stutter and I don't take my time when it comes to Nashvillians in the city that I love and where I grew up. And it's about having someone that's going to be very intentional about getting work done. I'm not going to give you any more political jargon, and I don't give you political jargon because it's not fair and it's not transparent. I want
Thank
you
you,
all to
Ms.
know
Bush.
that this is who I am. Go to
Thank
the
you.
polls, Fran Bush for your next mayor. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Vivian Wilhoit. I'm running for mayor of Nashville, Davidson County, and I ask you for your vote. I came here 40 years ago from Gulfport, Mississippi, seeking a dream. I found it, my husband. But the thing is, from that point on, I knew that Nashville was great. I knew that Nashville was great because they elected me twice to be a council member of District 29. I knew that Nashville was great when they elected me allowed to be your assessor of property. I operate an $8.1 million budget, 85 staff members, and they are all diversified and all are happy and don't want me to run for mayor. But let me just say this. The work that we've done at the assessor of property, we can bring it to Nashville. Nashville should be a welcoming place for everybody. Black, white, tall, short, gay, straight, everyone. And that's the type of Nashville we want. I've been there. I'm African-American. I worry about my sons every day. And I know you worry about your safety in this synagogue. We can work this out and we can put money into public
Thank you,
safety,
Ms. Wilhoit.
education, and affordable housing. Vote Vivian Wilhoit
Thank you.
as your mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Wilshire.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you to you all for being here tonight. Thank you for caring enough about your city to spend the time asking great questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to more of them, but caring enough about the city to want to invest your evening in assessing who the next mayor should be. My name is Matt Wilshire. I hope you've heard tonight that I have the executive leadership experience, both in the private sector and in the public sector, to take on the big challenges that we're facing as a city. I would be honored to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator.
I ran for Congress last fall because we redistricted Nashville into 3 congressional districts, and somebody needed to stand up and defend the city. This is an extension of that for me because serving in the state legislature, I see that we are in the midst of what I would call an attempted hostile takeover. We need somebody who has the relationships with and understands that dynamic to lead us through the coming months ahead. And we need somebody that we can trust. I've been endorsed by my colleagues, Bob Freeman, John Ray Clemens, Bo Mitchell, Sarah Kyle, Gloria Johnson, because they all know me. They trust me. They know that I have the temperament, the experience, and the drive to lead Nashville through the challenging months ahead. I grew up in this city, and it's been wonderful to be here with you this evening. My name is Heidi Campbell. I ask you for your vote.
Councilmember.
Thank you for coming tonight to the first forum we've had that has justice in its description. And that is so important because justice is how we're going to deliver the joy that so many of us remember and want to feel again and know again. I asked you earlier to remember 2 things. They're related to preparedness and priorities. I do want you to remember one other thing, which is my name, Freddie O'Connell. But the 15 fixes I mentioned earlier are on our website, readyforfreddie.com, and they're focused on what the community needs. And that is things like schools, sidewalks, safety, not stadiums. And I hear more often than I ever have. I heard it again just yesterday at Roundtable Lunch that people are thinking about leaving. And I am running for mayor because I want Nashvillians to stay. I want you to stay. I'm ready on day 1. You are my priority, and I'd love to earn your vote. Thank you so much.
Ms. Johnson.
So how you live in your community determines how in tune you are with it. And there's a lot of people that are not in tune with Music City right now. So our next 4 years have to be defined by how we bring everyone in tune with this city. And so I thank you for your time, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Councilmember.
I am Sharon Hurt, and I am the change that this city needs. Nothing changes if nothing changes. If we do what we always done, we're gonna get what we always gotten. I have done affordable housing, still doing affordable housing, shuttle transportation, work with our children, economic development, workforce development, you name it. I have served this community in the trenches. I want to make sure that not one block, not one community is forgotten, making sure that no other person is discounted, dismissed, or disenfranchised. I want to be a hope and prosperity. As your mayor, you will have truth and transparency. I am the change that you need in this city. Sharon for Nashville, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates and audience. And before, oh, yeah. Thank you. Before we release you all into the wild, I'm going to pass it off to Ron Galbraith to close us out for the evening.
All right, thank you. Well, if anybody should ask you, what does democracy look like? Which is a question that comes up from time to time these days. You've got it here this evening in this wonderful building. You've got people here who are willing to step into this challenge. It's a big challenge. I know you don't work very hard, just kind of have one of these twice a day or something like that. And I also want to ask anyone else here who is running for office, not for mayor, would you please stand up and let us recognize you? All right, thank you. Thank you. Again, this is what democracy looks like. People who are asked tough questions, give honest answers, sometimes losing track of the clock. I know that. But let's thank Emily for doing a wonderful job with this. All of the co-sponsors who have also joined the Nashville Jewish Social Justice Roundtable, we thank you because you have to ultimately ask the questions, struggle with the answers, make choices. But as Judy said at the beginning, all of that doesn't work unless on August 3rd, you vote. And that's what we're all committed to do. Thank you. By the way, right back here are meet and greet and treats. So please join and be prepared. There may be more questions. Thank you.
Okay. I just